It is Off Script Extra Time. It is Chris and Robbie, and we've only gone and snared. Well, I joked to Robbie about this last night, in actual fact, the kingmaker for boxing in this part of the world. Now, he's gone up in the world, and I like to think, Rob, that we played our own small little part in this man's ascent.
We didn't do a lot, let's face it.
No, we didn't. We absolutely did not. It is great to welcome into our humble abode former WK World Kickboxing Champion, a man who's represented a number of boxers through the years, a man who's been part of the money team as well over in the States. He now, though, is the head of boxing, Skill Challenge Entertainment. That entity is out of Saudi Arabia. It is the one and only Amer Abdallah. Amer, welcome back to our humble abode.
Oh, man, it's great to be back home, because that's what this is.
It is home. It's home for us, and it's now home for you. And listen, let's get to it, because, well, you're stealing our jobs. I've seen you emceeing in the last few weeks. You're now heading up this exciting proposition out of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. What's the secret, Amer? What's been going on with you in the last couple of years?
First of all, alhamdulillah, I always say thank God for everything. I've been a part of the sports combat world since I was 8 years old, and I always fell in love with every part of the sport. Coming up as a fighter myself, I simultaneously owned a gym, trained guys, managed guys, promoted guys. I've touched every part of this sport. So I always say, I don't call it success, but I think that why it works for me is because I know every single part of this game, and I've been there and I've done that. As a gym owner and a struggling gym owner, I know what that's like to try to pay your bills with fighters, and what it's like to deal with fighters. New York State, where I grew up, is divided into two areas. The Golden Gloves is New York City is one side, and then Upstate's the other side. I was a head coach of the New York State Golden Gloves team for a couple of years, so I know what it's like to coach guys and be an advisor, be a promoter. Even when I started promoting fights, I was the first fighter, I always say, that promoted themselves, the first promoter to promote themselves as a fighter. And at that time, it was 2000, late 90s. It was a huge conflict of interest. So, but now forward today, every fighter is their own promoter. Yeah. So anyway, I've touched every part of the game, and I think that's what helps me kind of when I sit at the table negotiating with a promoter, with an advisor, with a manager, with a fighter, I know what they're thinking and where they are. Even a gym owner, I know where they're at and kind of where their head is and what their objectives are. So I can relate to every part of it.
And when you cast your mind back to your own fighting career, undefeated as a kickboxer, Amer, could you ever have envisaged staging a fight which promises possibly to be the biggest fight of the year between two guys who have had a combined less than 15 professional fights?
Listen, it's a heck of a ride. Can I ever sit back and say, and my wife, we had some private conversations where she said, "This is what you've been working for." I remember one time I came back from winning my third amateur national title. I won back-to-back national titles, and I walked into the gym and I was so happy and I was so excited and I was just ecstatic, and my coach was just so nonchalant about it. And I said, "Man, can you believe it? We just won the third one." He goes, "Yeah, but that's what we came here for." So it's kind of that same mentality of, man, this is what I worked for. Now, could I have ever imagined it happened at this capacity? Probably not. It's everything that I've aspired towards. But when Prince Khalid opened up that door for me and allowed me to come in and take this role, which is a massive responsibility for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I understand and I bear the responsibility, and I bear, I know the weight that's on there. But could I have imagined that it would have went as flawless as it did? No.
We've had many conversations in the past about how the landscape of boxing is changing, the cult of celebrity, the kind of YouTube influence. We've talked many times about the Paul brothers, sure. Amer, and here you are staging that fight, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury in Saudi Arabia. It did numbers that I think surprised everyone. I think the popularity of it, the kind of interest levels in it surpassed even optimistic expectations, I'm sure. And it's a really interesting experiment, isn't it? Because you're talking about two guys who have come from a celebrity background. Sure. At least Tommy, yes, he's in a boxing family, but he was on a Love Island reality show. Jake Paul worked for Disney. Jake Paul is a YouTuber who was famous for doing Vines originally, and has come from that space and has taken the sport of boxing really seriously, to his credit. And we're now seeing what that can create and what power that can generate in terms of interest levels and a new kind of look at the sport. I mean, seasoned pros must be looking at that going, what the heck?
Well, look, there's a lot to that, and if I can go back to 2018, Robbie, when Logan Paul fought KSI, that was in Manchester. I don't know if you remember that fight, and that was the first kind of influencer fight, and you got to give KSI credit for kind of starting this whole YouTube revolution, because he did. And he had fought, Joe Weller, who was another YouTuber. That was the first one that they did, and that really kind of caught wind. And that's when I started noticing, and I said, as promoters, because that was the active role that I was in at that time, as promoters, our job is to put butts in seats and eyeballs on the ring, right? And these guys collectively, they have 40 million followers. They have a captured audience that we attain to get. So when I approached, and at that time his manager was Liam, when I approached KSI, they actually approached me first because they wanted to do a training camp in Las Vegas. And when they came, we kind of established that relationship. And I said, listen, let me promote the fight. And Liam goes, we really don't need you. And he didn't. They have everything that I could give them, which is, I have the know-how and the experience, but, they have that captive audience. So go back to 2018 when KSI fought Logan in Manchester. Badu, they invited Badu and I there because we had worked with him in Vegas, and I told Prince Nassim, he was there, and I said, listen, you want to go to the fight tonight? And he goes, there's no fight tonight. I said, no, there is. There's one in Manchester. He goes, bro, I live here. There's no fight here tonight. I said, I'm telling you. He goes, who is it? And I said, it's a guy named Logan Paul and KSI. He's like, man, who the hell is that? And then he was like, no, I'm not going to go. And then he called me like an hour later. He's like, yo, I just talked to my son, and my son wants to go. I didn't know it was this big of a fight. And when we walked into that arena, that place was jam-packed. And I just looked around. I still have video on my phone. And I looked around and I said, oh, my God, this is a new age of boxing. And I got ridiculed for it. The common boxing fan, which I am. I'm a diehard boxing fan. But the common boxing fan was like, man, this sellout crap, forget about that. It's not a sellout. It's a new age of boxing. You look at that arena, and you've got 18,000 people jam-packed there to watch two guys fight in headgear. Because that fight, if you remember, they fought in headgear. It was an amateur fight. Yeah, it was an amateur fight. And I told Badu and I told Prince Nassim, I go, this is a new age. This is a new age of boxing. Michael Buffer was there. It was crazy.
So with that in mind then, Amer, and be honest with this, when you approach Prince Khalid, when he approaches you about heading up his boxing operation in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, when you drop the names Tommy Fury and Jake Paul, is that a hard sell, or does he immediately say, Amer, I believe in you, I trust in you, if these are the numbers, go and do it?
So let me take it back. We can go, man. This thing's got tentacles. We can go anywhere with this. So Usyk, Joshua, 2. Rage on the Red Sea, Saudi Arabia. At that time, that was November of 22.
Yes, it was, yeah.
I had the rights for Saudi for Anderson Silva versus Jake Paul.
It was August 22.
It was August 22.
It was August 22.
Sorry,
I only know
August.
that
It was your
because
wedding.
I was on honeymoon.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was Robbie's wedding.
Well,
August.
I dragged my new wife to watch it in a
Nice.
bar.
Oh, good. Are you guys still married?
We are,
Okay,
amazingly.
Good. So yeah, August of 22. So I had the rights on Anderson Silva, Jake Paul, and I presented that to Prince Khalid. And he goes, please, I don't want to see any of this stuff. I'm not into the YouTube stuff, because he's a diehard boxing fan. Like, he loves good fights. He wants the big fights, the best fights. He wants the champion versus the number one contender. He wants the undisputed. He wants, unifications. He loves those things because he's a boxing purist. And that, by the way, is why Skill Challenge is, called For the Fighters and For the Fans, because, tries to give everybody the fights that they want to see. But we'll get to that later. So I said, listen, let's do Anderson Silva, Jake Paul. And he goes, please don't bring me stuff like that. And I was like, damn, like I struck out on my first time up to bat. And I was like, okay. I said, no problem, Your Highness. I go, I'll work on some other stuff. And then, Jake Paul had visited the kingdom, and he was Prince Khalid's guest when Logan did the WE there. Yeah. And people were catching attention. And they were noticing, and the Ministry of Sport liked the attention, and I think that a lot of people caught it. And Prince Khalid said, "What fights are out there that make sense for this kid?" And I said, "Well, the Tommy Fury fight's out there." And he goes, "That's the fight I want." I said, "Listen to me. I just got to tell you this. This fight has tried to happen a couple of times, and there's always been excuses. I'm not confident I can deliver this fight. How about we have a backup?" And I'll tell you, our backup was Mike Perry. the bare knuckle boxer guy. And Mike was on board, and it would have been an easy fight to make. And I said, I would recommend doing the Mike Perry fight. He said, it's either Tommy Fury or I don't want it. I want a real fight. I said, okay. I said, but I'm telling you, I'm just terrified. I'm terrified that this fight's not going to happen. And look, don't think that I wasn't sweating when Tommy didn't show up to the first press conference, because I was. And I was just like, please, God, just get this kid here. But to Tommy's credit, and getting to know him over the past couple of weeks, first of all, he's a beautiful guy. He really is. Just a genuinely good soul. He wanted the fight. I never believed that he didn't want the fight, right? I just always knew that there were circumstances there. And he had just had a baby recently. Yeah. That's why he couldn't really make the first press conference. And there were some other things going on.
In the end, that helped sell it, because, of course, it pumped the narrative that he was scared.
Exactly. And one of the things leading up to the fight I said is, what do our human nature, when we can't get something, we want it more. We want it more. We want it more. So this fight was supposed to happen, canceled. Supposed to happen, canceled. He didn't show up to the press conference. Everybody's then all of a sudden, Tommy's coming, and boom, you do the kind of numbers that we did. It's, I use the word throughout the whole promotion, unprecedented, because every facet of this promotion was unprecedented.
So it's good for boxing.
Man, it's amazing for boxing. Look at all these new fans that we have.
I have to say, if you took two guys at two real prodigies who'd come up through the amateur ranks and were expected to have amazing careers, and they were sort of 6 or 7 fights in, you simply wouldn't have that level of intrigue. I mean, what I thought was interesting about it, and I'm much less cynical about these kind of fights than Chris, but when Tommy was walking out the ring, it kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh my word, just trying to put myself in his shoes. He's walking out to fight a YouTuber who's been mocking him relentlessly, who's been trying to discredit him, saying that you're not really a Fury, that your family's going to disown you. The Furies themselves, even Tyson said, I'm going to disown you. There was all this talk about a tattoo, changing his name. I mean, the amount of pressure on this guy to deliver a win was unbelievable. And he did have to also be cognizant of the fact that Jake Paul had knocked out 4 of his previous opponents.
Hey, Jake's got that equalizer, whether you love him or hate him. That right hand's lethal. Like, that hurts people. Here's the thing, is Tommy's got 8 fights. If you look, and Jake's got 6 fights. If you look at any of our current champions today and look at the first 10, 15 fights they have, there is nothing impressive about any one of their first 10 to 15 fights. There just isn't. And here we are demanding that a guy like Jake Paul fights a real tough fight. And the same with Tommy. To Tommy's credit, he's never been on a stage that big. Like, the first 7 guys that he fought, or the first 8 guys that he fought, were nowhere near main event caliber guys. The last one, I think the fight that he had here in Dubai, might have the most attention. And the only reason it has attention is because Jake Paul's name is affixed to it. Yeah. And he's affiliated with him. And that monkey on Tommy's back was always, it wasn't about when are you going to fight next. It was, are you going to fight Jake Paul? Are you going to fight Jake Paul? When are you fighting Jake Paul? Like, the Jake Paul shadow has been overcast Tommy Fury's career for the past 2 years since that happened. So I think that I give him a lot of credit, because, yes, you are Tyson Fury's brother, but you're not Tyson Fury.
No.
And there's a big difference.
And that was going to be my next question. I mean, just how impressed, well, A, did the fight go as you suspected it would, and just how impressed were you with Tommy Fury's kind of ring IQ in there?
I didn't know Tommy that well. I did not expect him to be as good as he was. For 8 fights, and for the thing is in the gym you can look spectacular, and I've seen clips of him training and whatnot, and I never really followed him that much. As much as I respect the family and the lineage and the whole family, history, I never really followed Tommy that much. He was always, Tyson's brother, and that's just what it was. But what really surprised me was how this kid, and I say kid because he's half my age, how this kid dealt with the pressure.
Yeah.
And that was not a little bit of pressure. Sometimes fighters freeze under the lights. You can be a superstar in the gym, and you see it all the time. Back in Vegas, we have guys in the gym that are just absolute dogs. But when the lights go on and the cameras are on, it's a
melt.
dud. Yeah. But he stepped up, and he became something different that night. And I think that the pressure of the fight, the pressure of Jake Paul, the pressure of what happens if I lose to Jake Paul. Like, do I really have a boxing career if I lose to a YouTube Disney kid? Do I really have that? Regardless of how much Jake Paul wants to take this serious, most boxing fans don't look at him as a serious boxer, although he is. So he had a ton of pressure going in there, and he rose to the occasion. He was much better than I thought he was.
Yeah, me too.
And from a Jake Paul perspective, what's interesting about him is he garners attention both ways. So he gets attention from someone like Carl Froch, who ridicules him. But all that does is it continues to stir the general kind of pot surrounding him. And Carl, I want to get your thoughts on what he said, because he called him a completely basic fighter who can throw a punch but can't box. And is that Carl just saying that for effect?
I guess,
does he really believe that?
Wait, let's step back and look at this. No, let's step back and look at this. You're talking about an established, distinguished world champion in Carl Froch. It's like walking in the street and an ant bumps into your foot. Like, are you going to go down and start arguing with the ant? You just step on it and move on. This guy has taken time out of his day to approach Jake Paul and call him out. Why? You have to give Jake Paul credit. When Jake Paul walks into a UFC arena, everybody chants F Jake Paul. He rents enough space in everybody's head to make them tune in. It's a page out of Floyd Mayweather's book, and I say that all the time. He said, most people pay to watch me lose. Some people pay to watch me win, but they all pay.
But this is the interesting thing, and I remember talking to you, Amer, about this a couple of years back. Floyd, part of the enigma of Floyd Mayweather, I was one of them. I tune in hoping tonight's the night.
Yes.
The O will go.
Yes.
Jake Paul's O is now gone. Does he remain as much of a cash cow? Does he remain still a must-see commodity after this defeat to Tommy Fury, or has the bubble slightly burst?
No, you have to be honest. The bubble absolutely slightly burst, right? And I think that they identify that as well. The whole mentality of, in the mindset of, is he going to lose? When's he going to lose? Can we see him get knocked out? He talks so much. Everybody loves that. Everybody loves a villain. They love him because they hate him, right? And what that means is it's good for business. Floyd did that perfectly, and he executed it to over $1 billion career. So Jake Paul was the same way. And now the big thing was, okay, you fought a boxer and you lost. Where does he go now? I think that he's going to pivot, and there's going to be some interesting news that comes out of what he's going to do next. But of course, I think it took away from,
when you say pivot,
undefeated.
I mean, obviously you're privy to information that we are not. When you say pivot, is that a future in the octagon, or is that staying with boxing?
I think Jake's going to do what Jake's going to do, and it's going to make noise. It's not my story to tell.
Interesting.
But can you give us an insight? Because obviously you were, front and center. You were in the absolute thick of that event, Amer.
Sure.
How did both men react? I would imagine, obviously, sheer relief from Tommy Fury. But, I think personally, Jake has kind of taken it on the chin. It certainly, at least publicly. I don't know what he's been like privately, but the way he's responded to it, okay, he made one or two excuses which may well have had some validity. But how did they react, from what you could see as a man on the inside? Okay,
first of all, let me say that I'm bipartial. So I wasn't Team Fury. I wasn't Team Paul. I have a great relationship with Nikisa, who's Jake Paul's business manager. I have a good relationship with Jake since the very beginning. I have a good relationship with John and Tommy. I have zero interest. Like, it doesn't matter to me who won, right? We wanted to put on a great fight. But to go back to the question of how Jake took it, how Tommy took it, I will say this before I say that. This is why I'm saying I'm not either way. Jake had valid reasons not to take this fight. He did. And I know leading up to camp, he had some issues where, and I'm surprised he even mentioned it, that he had some medical issues, and they weren't severe, but they were enough where most fighters would say, I don't want to take this risk.
Well, Tommy himself pulled out, did he not, because of a chest infection?
He did. I don't remember what the actual excuse, whether it was a rib infection, something like that, but Jake had a plausible reason to pull out of the fight, and they held camp here in Dubai.
Yeah.
And I had conversations with Nikisa, and nobody knew that, but he said, listen, Jake will not pull out of this fight. He goes, he's in this thing to fight. And I give him a ton of credit for a young man with so much pressure, 6 fights, people wanting to see him lose, the biggest test of his life. And look, I mean, whether people, use it as an excuse or not, he wasn't 100%. That doesn't take away that Tommy looked phenomenal that night and he won the fight. I do believe Tommy won the fight. I mean, there are some controversial decisions on the point deduction and all that, and we can talk about that later. But the fight that I saw, Tommy Fury won the fight. But I give Jake a ton of credit. And did he take it on the chin? Yeah, he did. He's not crying, bloody murder. But the kid also walked away with $30+ million. I mean, that's not a bad loss to take,
No,
is
it
it?
isn't. I take that loss.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time, and in a lot of ways, that show has rolled out of town now. There's an awful lot to discuss. What I would call, and you're going to hate me for saying this, I'm real boxing to discuss. Real boxing to discuss, and you know where I want to start. I want to start with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because you said something interesting. The entity with which you represent has been created for the fighters and for the fans.
Yeah.
Robbie, as you well know, big golf fan. We've seen Saudi Arabia invest huge sums of money in live golf. They want to change the face of golf. We've got a very good friend who has been shouting from the rooftops for 12 months that boxing is there for the taking. A Kingdom of Saudi Arabia should grab hold of that sport and strip away belts. Let's get the best fighting the best, invest the money in, and let's start making the fights that matter. Are we on course to see that? Has Saudi Arabia got that kind of ambitions?
So I'm smiling as you're talking, because the things that you're talking about is Prince Khaled's exact vision. His vision is to, and it's funny you say belt, because there's discussions about that also. And we have a great relationship. You know, the WBC, Mauricio Sulman was there. We have a great relationship with him. The WBA, the WIBF, the WBO. You know, but let's step away from the relationships and all of that. Why does the UFC have people in the audience from the first bout until the last bout? Where boxing, and I was there in Las Vegas when Floyd fought Maidana, and on the co-main event was Amir Khan, and before that was Adrian Broner. And people weren't in the arena until Floyd fought. So boxing it does have, you know, that the fans see the main event and that's it, where the UFC doesn't do that. Why? Because there's no sanctioning bodies, there's no promoters, there's no networks. The best fight the best, and Dana White has figured that out, and you got to give the guy credit for that. Every fight is a good fight. When they say a stacked card, like, they have good fights. Number one's fighting number two, where the champion's fighting the number one contender. You know, they don't have, well, in this sanctioning body and in this promotion, and the network can't do it. I mean, how long did Floyd and Manny take to make, right? There's so
7
many
years, too long.
Exactly. So what Prince Khaled's vision is we're going to work with every promoter. And when we say for the fighters and for the fans, of course the promoters are a part of this thing, but their fighters are going to, one, be compensated their worth, which is phenomenal. Two, for the fans, they're going to be able to see the best fights. And we're not going to have to, you know, be in a marriage with one network or one promoter. We're working with everybody. And it's a movement to be able to put on the best fights for the fighters and for the fans. Now, right now, we're doing, you know, these big, massive fights, but there are also in the pipeline that we're going to start doing regional shows, and we're going to start doing more fights to have, you know, smaller events, so that we can build the guys and get them to that level. But of course, the big mega fights will continuously be the focal point of skill challenge promotions.
When we look at the heavyweight division, Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk continues to kind of float along without any kind of real movement. You know, we really want to see AJ fight Deontay Wilder for obvious reasons, because that's a fight that's been talked about for the best part of 5 years, Amer. I mean, in your opinion, or in your best guess, what is the most realistic kind of big blue ribbon fight? And I say that because it's not maybe for the belts, because if it is Wilder versus AJ, then it's simply a fight that we want to see as opposed to a fight for the title. But which fights are going to get made, and why aren't they getting made as often as we want them to be?
Well, look, I think those are valid questions. I mean, I have to be careful of what I say, because there are plans for, you know, a mega fight that's looking to get done, and we'll have an announcement hopefully in the next month or two, probably after Ramadan. That'll happen in Q3, Q4 in Saudi. But you know, the intriguing fights that people want to see is the undisputed, right? Usyk and Fury has been going on since November, October, that they were trying to make this fight happen. No, since August, and since this fight, since September. And there was, you know, that. Let me just go back and say my involvement in that fight is there are already negotiations happening prior to me taking this position. So my stance, my position was, every fight after this fight, I'll handle and I'll negotiate and we'll bring to the table and we'll start promoting. But that fight in particular, because there were so many hands in the pot, so many promises, so many purse splits, this, that, if I were to get involved, I'd kind of take it back, and they're already running out of time. So in order not to hinder that, I said, why don't we just finalize this thing and move on? And it was unfortunate, because there was a big pot to split for an undisputed fight. And I think, I know that, Prince Khalid put his best foot forward to make that fight happen, and for whatever reasons it didn't, and then he walked away. He said, that was my offer. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. Listen, the offer, everybody knows it's a great offer.
And that door's closed?
That door's closed. So, here's the one thing about Prince Khalid. He's a military man. Let's make it very clear. And a lot of people don't know that. And he's a very special, it's from a special operations, it's an elite level of the military that he's from. He pulls the trigger. He executes fast, swift. He doesn't have, let's negotiate, let's sit back. It's take it or leave it. He does that in every facet of his life, in business, even with my personal relationship with him. He is straight to the point. There's no tiptoeing around things. He made a great offer. Everybody knows it's a great offer. You either take it or leave it. And the fact that it took some time, and again, there was a lot going on before I got there. The fact that it didn't get done, he just walked away from me. He said, I gave you the offer, and that's it, and we move on.
Las Vegas is home for you now, of course, and we've heard a lot. There's been a lot of chatter amongst myself and Robbie and some of our guests as to where the Middle East now sits in terms of a hotbed for boxing. We often say that Las Vegas is the Mecca for boxing. Saudi Arabia, the kingdom thereof, very much front and centre. We've got Matchroom now with Abu Dhabi DCT.
Sure.
We had Bivol Ramirez back end of last year. We know conversations underway, an announcement shortly on a June date. Two kind of pronged to this. Is the Middle East now, Amer, in your opinion, the one-stop shop? Are all the promoters looking to this region? And can Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia coexist? Do you see them as a rival, or are they merely a friend that can actually help drive this boxing vehicle?
Great question. Fair question. I think with everything in boxing, there's always rivalries. But I think as Muslim countries, as massive Muslim countries in these powerhouses, they worked with each other to uphold and uplift boxing in the region. So when a good fight happens in Saudi, and a good fight happens in Abu Dhabi, and a good fight happens in Qatar or Bahrain or whatever of the region happens, I think they all applaud each other. When Bivol Ramirez was here, even though, listen, it wasn't a massive fight. That's not a big fight. But it was, a decent introductory fight.
Yes.
Prince Khalid came to support it. He came from Saudi, and he was there to support it. He had nothing to do with it. He had no interest in Matchroom, no interest in either fighter, no interest in a rematch, no interest in any fighter on the card, zero. He came just as a spectator to see, the fight and support Abu Dhabi in what they're doing. So I think that of course, everybody wants to have the best fight. That's human nature, right? But I know from Prince Khalid's perspective is he wants to see the region do well, which takes me to the first part of your question is this the new hotbed of boxing? I don't know how it can't be, because, everybody gravitates to where the money is. Everybody gravitates to where the fame and the popularity is. And, maybe I'm biased in how, because I'm with Skill Challenge, but ask the fighters if they've ever been treated the way that we've treated them. Ask fighters if they ever had, the red carpet treatment and how well we took care of everybody. That's different in boxing. And I don't say better or worse. I say it's different.
Okay, added to that then, the people that you know in Las Vegas, are they running scared? Are they worried?
I don't know if running scared. I think they want to be a part of it. That's what it is. And promoters and managers, they have rights on these guys. I think the new age of boxing is a lot of these fighters are doing shorter-term contract, and I think Canelo is really, Floyd, of course, started that. I use Floyd a lot because I was around him for a long time in Vegas, even though not personally, around the gym and a lot of the fighters. So, and I worked with a lot of the fighters, and he really broke the mold of how boxing is done and how money is made in boxing. But you look like Canelo is, a fight-by-fight basis. He might have an option here or there, depending on if it's a title fight and whatnot. And I think a lot of fighters are starting to gravitate towards that element of boxing. But the only way that works is if you have a Saudi Arabia or an Abu Dhabi or somebody in place that can say, listen, we'll pay you per fight and we'll pay you handsomely for it, where you don't necessarily need the promoter to piggyback off of. But that doesn't mean that that we don't work with promoters. No, we have, that's their due right. If they built the guy and they have the rights on him, of course, everybody's going to make money. But can that continue to work? Of course it can. And I think that a lot of the fighters are going to gravitate towards that. And I don't see. I think if anybody's threatened, I think that's a weakness on their part. If anything, this is an opportunity.
Is the presence of Saudi or the emergence of Saudi, Amer, going to get us any closer to sort of cutting through all the clutter, do you think, of boxing, with all the federations, the councils, the organisations, the promotions? You know, the kind of machinations that sometimes entangle these potential super fights, and really, you could argue, hold the sport back.
I would love to, Robbie, give you a black and white answer. Let me, and I have to kind of step back with every question that you asked to kind of give you a little bit of insight. When we did the press conference, the second panel, we had, the Mike Tyson on there. And, and I asked Mike this question. I said, does the business of boxing prevent boxing from growing? And the answer is absolutely. Because the business in itself is not, I mean, look, it's unregulated. There's no union. There's no, it's different than the NBA or the NFL or, and how it operates. So the business of boxing absolutely hinders the big fights. And you look and you see, like Crawford Spence should happen, right? That fight should happen. Davis Garcia should have happened. Thank God it's happening now, and finally, everything is getting done. But there was a couple of close calls where that fight wasn't happening. So these fights should happen. Does Saudi Arabia kind of cut through that clutter? Of course it does, because what we do is we buy out the rights, and we just say, okay, promoter A, promoter B, these are your guys, and when they sit together, there isn't a massive site fee, and there isn't a massive pot that they can go through and dictate who gets what. They have to generate that revenue. Where with Saudi Arabia, would come in and say, listen, this is what you're worth. This is what you're worth. We're willing to pay you this. We're willing to pay you this. We get the total rights. We'll shop it out to wherever we want afterwards. The buyout makes sense from a business perspective because you're getting upfront money. And then, depending on how you negotiate pay-per-view, TV, whatever it may be, is the back-end money. And it makes sense on all fronts. So can it solve it? Of course it can. Will it? I don't know.
That's the trickier question.
A few questions looking ahead to the future of boxing. I just want to pause for a second, Amer. And I know, listen, this man you respect massively. I think you consider him a friend as well. I can't help but ask about Floyd Mayweather. A very good source of mine tells me 1,000 tickets only sold at the O2 Arena. And I'm speaking my own opinion here, I can't help but think he is sullying his kind of golden reputation. He's rolling out against not even your Jake Paul social media stars. He's been rolled out against Z-list TV stars. Something is not adding up to me on this, Amer, and I'm sure you're better versed than me. I'm not going to go into maybe what Floyd is battling financially or what have you, but what do you make of A, what he's doing, and B, the shows he's putting on? Because this is not the Floyd Mayweather that me, a boxing fan, was brought up with.
Okay, so let me just go back. Again, we have to always step back.
Of course, because I threw a lot at you. I appreciate that.
Floyd and I don't have a personal relationship where we consider each other friends or not. We're very cordial with each other when we see each other, and I think that's the extent of it. Maybe our lifestyles are different, which everybody is has the right to live their life the way that they do. So that's one. Two, Floyd Mayweather, and again, I don't love him. I don't hate him. I am very objective when it comes to Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather redefined the way that boxing is done. The business is done. The money is done. People try to fight the way he does, dress the way he does, talk the way he does because it worked. Yeah. And it doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for him. So during Floyd's time, during his career, a marvelous 50 fights, 50 wins, 0 losses, unbelievable money, unbelievable pay-per-views. The numbers that he did for pay-per-view, nobody has done and nobody will do. It's just the way. Nobody that we know today will do Floyd Mayweather numbers. They just won't. You can't beat a 4.6 million pay-per-view buys just in the United States at $100 a pop. Talking about $500 million generated just from TV between Floyd and Manny. Follow that by Floyd McGregor, 4.2 million. He's got the top 5-6 pay-per-view buys ever. So during Floyd's career, when he was a young man, when he was taking risks, even up until his late 30s, Floyd was fighting the best guys in the world, and he was making massive money. Now, approaching nearly 50, because him and I are the same age, but nearly 50 years old, is it fair for us to say, Floyd, why are you fighting these bums when he's getting paid millions? Let the man make his money. Like, if there's 100 people in the audience or if there's 100,000 people, the difference is, Chris, is that we're used to Floyd selling out. We're used to Floyd, when I say selling out arenas. We're used to million-plus pay-per-views. We're used to him fighting the Pacquiaos and the Cottos and the Marquezes and all of the Corraleses and all of these big names that he's fought. We're used to that. But the guy's 50 years old. Let the man make his money. If these promoters, and I'll call them just promoters, if these promoters want to pay this guy 7 figures based on his legacy to fight, who are we?
Is he really making that kind of money?
Is he making it?
Yeah, he is.
Because, again, I can't help but look at his Instagram. The man will flog anything. The man will flog. We've seen him here in Dubai.
Mainly a luxury car company.
Luxury car. You'll get into some Bitcoin. I mean, the fella, to me, to earning $1 billion in his career, you look at his social media and it looks as if he's beg, borrowing and stealing at the minute.
I don't think that he is. I mean, Floyd lives in my neighborhood in Las Vegas. He's got
It's an affluent one then.
He's got a massive house. I don't think Floyd's hurting for money. Here's what I do think. And again, let's talk about, I talk very objective. Let's talk the subjective, right? Let's just talk as, open feelings, emotions, which is not objective at all, which is not factual based, from my perception. Floyd makes a lot of bad business decisions, right? If I were handling Floyd's businesses, I would probably structure a little bit different. Mind you, this is a man that went through his whole career without any endorsements and any sponsorships, which I think is a massive problem. I think that he could have done so much more with that. But listen, at the end, he started bringing them on, which is his prerogative, his right to do whatever he wants to do. But there are, maybe there are some affiliations but Floyd, that he maybe shouldn't be lined up with, but Floyd does what Floyd wants to do, and I respect that. He doesn't surround himself with advisors and managers that tell him. He will make the decisions based on the facts that he sees, and that's it. And sometimes those aren't great decisions, but he does them. There was one time, and this is to Floyd's credit, there was like an infomercial kind of thing that he did about a window cleaning company or whatnot, and everybody was laughing about it. You guys are laughing about it now. I'll tell you something. That was a personal friend of Floyd's that did not pay Floyd a penny. He didn't pay him a penny to do that. He did that to help promote his buddy's business. And everybody was like, oh my God, Floyd's doing infomercials for this window company and whatnot. And it was what he was doing. It was helping his friend out, which is something so admirable and honorable. Turned out to be one of the things that everybody, kind of joked and ridiculed about. But he did it for a good reason. And look, Floyd lives a lavish lifestyle. He does. His cars, his house, the way he travels, the way he dresses. And he's earned it, man. I mean, the guy has done things that everybody just dreams about doing.
Fair.
So,
Fair.
Did the fight tank? Yeah, of course it did. It sucked. There was nobody in the crowd in the UK. Mind you, it wasn't good that he was going up against a hot Jake Paul event with the Fury fight. It didn't help that the media wasn't there. It didn't help that the guy that he fought was, I have no idea who that was. It didn't help that he didn't even promote the fight well. There's a lot of factors there that didn't help him. I don't know who the promoters were. It didn't help that he's got guys that might not know the boxing business around him at this stage of his career. Floyd is an elite echelon of guys, so he should be handled with white gloves and everything that he does, because it's a Floyd Mayweather legacy and name.
I think it's just, as to Chris's point, I think it's just a bit weird to see him in these kind of tawdry sort of fights. I think that's why isn't he just kind of basking in the glory of his 50-0 and being rolled out at these kind of...
Why is he not, dare I say it, why is he not, up against toe-to-toe with you from a promoting standpoint? It's Floyd Mayweather.
Right.
For goodness sake, he could be a totem pole for boxing, and he should have a sideshow.
Yeah, no, he should have been. And again, look, I have a wonderful relationship, probably closer than any promoter relationship with Leonard Ellerby of Mayweather Promotions. Mayweather Promotions should be a force to be reckoned with. It really should be. And that's nothing bad against Leonard or nothing bad against Floyd, but it should be. But I think Floyd makes decisions based on, the information that he gets, and he might not trust anybody. I don't know. But I agree with you. I think such a legacy of Floyd Mayweather should be, a spotless reputation. And maybe he wants to do this because he likes to, or maybe he's doing this because the money is great. I don't know. But I see your point.
Yeah.
But we're conditioned when Floyd fights, like, oh my God, Floyd's fighting. And now it's kind of like, damn, man, what's he doing?
Yeah, what's he doing? That's what I come back to. If that's on one end of the scale, and we can sit and we can speculate about the fights that we want to see in 2023, the one fight that is set in stone, the one fight that I'm even considering heading to your native Las Vegas to see April 22nd, Ryan Garcia, 23-0, taking on Tank Davis, 28-0, 26 by way of knockout. These two fellas, styles make fights.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps talking about this one. How do you see it? I mean, are you going to be there? And can I get tickets? Can you sort me some tickets, please?
It's going to be. I am planning on being there, and it's going to be a fight fans fight.
Oh,
I mean, for anybody that knows anything about boxing, this is the fight you want to see. Ryan demands a great presence amongst the social media, amongst Latinos, that younger, fast, undefeated. Prospect that even like his battle with the mental illness it championed him as a hero for mental illness, that he overcame some things that he had in his career that he had to step back, and he there's a lot of audiences that now he appeals to. And then you got Tank Davis, who on the entire different side appeals to Black America, appeals to that that tough upbringing, that Baltimore tough guy, just Mike Tyson, if you will, kind of stigma of he's going to go in there and he's just going to decapitate you, and he's just Tank is nasty, right?
Yeah.
He's just when it comes to being in the gym as a fighter, it's like you don't want to be on the other side of that kid's sword. And again, kid, these guys are half my age, but he's an absolute force to be reckoned with. And what's going to happen in the fight? I mean, listen, any speculation is up. For exactly that speculation.
It's boxing. We love doing it. I mean,
but I see once Tank clips Ryan, I think the fight changes. I think that Ryan will do well in the beginning. Look, when Rolly fought Tank, he did a lot better than I thought he would, and especially in the opening round. I think that Tank, kind of backed off when he felt some of that power.
Yeah.
But once he made adjustments, he just walked him into whatever he wanted to walk him into. I think Ryan will be the same way, that he'll be fast. He'll probably give Tank some trouble in the opening rounds. I don't know if he can hurt Tank, but once Tank touches him, I'll let you know once he touches him and how he reacts, what's going to happen. But I think the fight changes.
Just
at
that
point.
sentence, I don't know if he can hurt Tank. It's like an oxymoron there. He's a tank.
Yeah.
For goodness sake, it's going to take something special to knock him off
But
course.
what a fight.
Right.
What a fight.
Cannot wait.
Yeah.
Genuinely. I want to get your thoughts very quickly on the state of boxing pertaining to Conor Benn, drug testing. Does boxing have an issue?
Of course it does. Of course it does. I mean, if the and I'm hearing that it's too many eggs that he ate, or that thwarted a guy's career. I mean, the millions that he was going to be paid, and I'm not privy to what the contractual price was, but something like that throws him off and taints him as a cheat, and PEDs, and again, the fight itself wasn't that appealing to me, but all the controversy around it makes it appealing, and it has that cloud around boxing that where are these regulatory bodies? Are we using VADA? Are we using USADA? Are we what the British Boxing Board? Who regulates that part of the sport? Boxing is very defragmented, and that's one issue that we definitely have to make sure that we do a better job of. And I'm glad that if he wasn't the clear, I'm glad that everything got cleared up.
Well, listen, Amer, we could sit here all day and put the world of boxing to rights. It's great to see you. Thank you for
brother.
answering the SOS late on. Don't be a stranger. When you land in this country, holler. We're always.
I appreciate it. And listen, you guys do have a big part to do with this, man. You guys have been with us from the beginning.
Listen, it's great to see you doing well. We didn't even get to Badu. We'll get to Badu when you're next in with us. But Amer Abdallah, thank you so much
for
joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Dubai Eye 103.8.
Join the conversation.